Hello and welcome to the mock revision video. Many of you might be studying for Year 10 exams now, and you're probably wondering what is the best way to revise? Which is a brilliant question. And so there seem to me to be four main difficulties about revision. Number one, what do I revise? Number two, when do I do it? Number three, how do I do it? And number four, why the hell should I do it? What's going to motivate me? So, which of those is the most important? I am going to answer all four of those in this video, of course. The most important is actually, what should I do to revise? And this is something that schools are not teaching you, or if they are teaching you, I think they're probably teaching you the wrong thing. Let me explain. So you may have been told that you need to reread your notes or your textbook or essays that you've written in the past, and that you should highlight them and make notes of them. And all these three things are wrong. There's loads of research that shows that actually that doesn't have an impact on memory. The reason for that is that it breeds familiarity. You're really familiar with what you wrote before and what you did in class. So when you read it again, it feels as though you know it because you've got a kind of memory of it, but actually you don't know it at all. You just know of it. And so it's a super inefficient way of revising because your brain doesn't try to work hard, and if your brain isn't working hard, it won't remember anything. Well, I hope your teachers have said actually to help you remember stuff and think hard, two brilliant ways is to do quizzes and to have revision flashcards. You go through the flashcards to test yourself, you read what's on one side and then test yourself with what's on the other. You flip it over and you see if you were right. Quizzing is exactly the same. You test yourself and choose from a number of options. If you're lucky and your teachers have prepared a brilliant quiz, then they will have put in wrong answers which appear right. That's really important because it tricks your brain into having to think hard. Which one's right? I can't tell. They all look right. What am I going to do? I'm going to think hard and remember more, and I'll be prepared. But there is a problem. Hopefully you've spotted it. In your real exam, you won't just have to write down all the quotations you can remember from your flashcards. And you won't just have to answer a multiple choice test. So yes, your memory will have been improved, but will your exam result? Well, a little bit, but it's not the most efficient way. Okay, you're probably thinking, Mr. Salles, I know I'm not going to reread stuff or just make notes on what I've read or highlight stuff or just do flashcards and quizzes. So please tell me what will be better. Well, the research is really cool about this. It says that you remember more by thinking hard and you think hard by trying to retrieve memories. Great. That's the flashcards and the quizzes. But then it says, if you can take that memory and link it to something else, that memory will be stronger and what you've linked it to will also be stronger. Can you see where I'm going here? These links, I'm going to do something like a mind map that links ideas together. Or I will find some other form of note-taking which links ideas together. Or I might even try the odd exam answer which links ideas together. You're getting the hang of this now. I'm going to link my ideas together somehow by forcing myself to remember stuff. Am I sorted yet, Mr. Salles? No. These methods would be super efficient if all you had to do was remember stuff and link it together. But that's not all you have to do. You have to pass an exam. Now, every single exam is full of artificial elements that aren't actually your skill in the subject. So if we take literature, for example, the extract question demands particular skills about how you deal with the extract and how you deal with the rest of the text. That's not a test of English. It's not a test of literature. It's not a test of how clever you are at the subject or how skilled. It's a test of, do you have a method that actually works to get the exam criteria into your answer? And the only way to do that is to practice answering the question. So that is going to be our superpower, doing past papers and then looking at the past paper mark scheme to see how you've done. But there is another problem. The other problem is the idea of a mock exam at all. So let me explain. Research says the best way to remember stuff is to practice it over time in gaps. It's called spaced practice. The worst way to practice is what's called massed practice, all the practice at the same time. What is a mock? All the practice at the same time. You practice too much of the exam, so when you get the feedback, when you get the exam back, you don't have time to practice the things that went wrong. You don't have time to learn from the mock. So the mock is a way for your teachers to measure where you are, but it's a really bad way to help you get better. A much better way to help you get better is to do the spaced practice. So to take exam questions and do them one at a time or a few at a time with increasing gaps of weeks and months between them, and then you'll get better. Even more importantly, it's not just having a gap, but increasing the length of the gap. So this is the other amazing part of the research. When you get bigger gaps, your brain starts to forget. And then you get the test again, and your brain says, oh, hang on, this must be quite important. I was forgetting this. I'm going to think harder, and then I'll remember more. And so technically speaking, what happens in the brain is that you build stronger neural pathways, and stronger neural pathways means you remember more for next time. So you need to start revising now, because when is your exam? It's much later. And starting your revision now in little chunks will make you perform loads better than doing loads of revision later. So let's think about that. You will have to do less revision by doing it now than if you work really hard later on. So that's a win. Okay, now we've established that you're going to do past papers, but not all of the paper at the same time. What are you actually going to do to make this work best? I'm glad you asked. So you're going to use the exam paper as a scaffold. The first thing you're going to do to build your confidence and expertise is cheat. You're going to cheat by using the mark scheme. So you've got the question in front of you and the mark scheme in front of you, and then you're going to try to write a 100% grade 9 lose no marks answer using the mark scheme. You'll actually find that it will be really hard to get top marks, but that's useful because then you're going to give it to your teacher and say, this is what I think my grade is worth, because I've used the mark scheme. I think I'm at grade 7 here, but I don't think I've managed to do these skills in grade 8 and 9. Can you give me some tips? Your teacher will say, hurrah, I've got a student who's in charge of their own learning and wants to improve and actually knows exactly how to improve. They just need a little bit of guidance from me. I love this student. I'm going to give them my extra time. Then you're going to leave a gap of a week or 2 weeks and try that question again, using your teacher's advice to see if you can improve the answer. Right now, you might want to make it a little bit more difficult. So you might get 3 past paper questions. You're going to get the mark scheme and transform it in some way. So let's say you turn what's in the mark scheme into revision cards. So from those 3 mark schemes, you've worked out 10 quotations that you've got to learn, and you've written down 6 words for each quotation that are going to be really great to use in your explanation about why that quotation is important. So you have in front of you those quotations and those keywords, and then at random you pick out one of the questions, and then you work out what you can take from your notes to answer the question, and again you try to get 100%. Your next stage is going to be to try and do that without the notes. So you're going to pick another question at random, having studied your notes and transformed them into mind maps or revision cards or however you've done it. As long as you transformed it into something else, you're going to be fine. And then you're going to try the test again, this time without looking at your notes. What are you going to do with these essays? Okay, having marked them yourself, you're going to take them to your ever-loving teacher and you're going to say, look, I've done these 3 essays. I think I would learn really brilliantly if you were to give me some full mark answers that I could study and learn from. And your teacher will say one of 2 things. Number 1, what a fantastic idea. Here you go. Here are my full mark answers for you to revise from. Or they will say, I hadn't thought actually about giving my students full mark answers to learn from. How peculiar. I wonder if that would work. Or they might say, I don't think that would work. It would be cheating. And you will say, well, let's do an experiment. Give me the essays and then set me a question that isn't one of the 3 essays that you've given me or the 5 essays you've given me or whatever. Then set me a question and see if I do well. If you test yourself on the essays by turning them into revision cards and mind maps and then doing a practice answer, those essays will become embedded in your mind. You won't just reproduce them word for word because that will be impossible. What you will do is internalize all those ideas. You will internalize all that vocabulary. You will remember how the argument's built up and Shazam! You will stroll into the exam knowing that you can answer every single question. Now, the next thing you're going to do with the past papers is get hold of at least 4 of them. So this may well be specimen papers plus the real things. And if you can't find 4, you're going to go to your teacher and say, give me more. Because who doesn't like a rhyme? Now, with those, you're going to work out what the kinds of questions are that examiners typically ask. And you'll start to see a pattern. You'll probably notice from the mark schemes that you get higher marks, not for writing about the character, but for writing about the author's ideas. And you will work out what the author's ideas are from your own revision, but also it'll be in the mark scheme. The examiners will tell you what to think about. Even better, you can watch my videos or buy my guides. That's why I write them, because they've got more ideas in them than you can typically get in class or on CGP or other guides. And I also make about £1.17 for each one you buy, so one day I will be a millionaire. And how many essays do you think you would have to do so that when the real exam comes around, you've already done that essay in the revision? Well, my prediction is if you've written 6 essays on 6 different topics, it will be almost impossible to get a question in the exam that doesn't cover those. My top tip here would be to find out what was set in 2017 and 2018, because in 2022 there is a massive chance that one of those 2 questions will be repeated in some form in the exam that you actually sit. And now it's time for some tactical thinking. You might have a Year 10 exam or a mock in Year 11, depending on when you watch this video. But what you're really doing is preparing for the final exam. So you need to think about that chunk of time ahead of you and spacing it out so you get enough goes at writing these kinds of exam answers. Now, that may mean you've got a mock in 2 weeks' time or 1 week's time, so you don't have much time to revise, and your temptation will be, oh, well, forget it then. But no, because you're actually revising for that final exam. So what you should do is say, well, tactically, if I've got the exam really soon, I'm just going to get really specific on one question. So on my literature paper, I've got to answer 4 questions, not 3, 4 questions. I'm just going to make sure I ace one of them, and I'm going to get obsessive about writing different essay practices for that one text. That will give you immense knowledge and also immense confidence when you get your marks back that your revision has actually worked. Because if you do exam practices using the mark scheme as I've described, using the teacher as I've described, you are guaranteed 100% to get much higher marks. I mean, it's just inevitable. Now, this technique is so powerful that when my son revised for his maths GCSE, he was able to take it at the end of Year 10. And by the end of Year 10, he had to do hardly any revision at all because he'd done so many papers that what happened was he'd answer all the questions on the first paper, but he would have got a certain percentage right. So in the next practice paper, he didn't have to answer so many questions. And in the next one, he had to answer even fewer questions. So when he got to his actual exam, he had hardly any questions left to revise because he knew it all just from exam practice. And that's exactly how your language and literature will work. It will be super powered if your teacher says, here are 10 perfect exam answers, 10 perfect descriptions, 10 perfect persuasive writing pieces. They won't do that, I don't expect, because they won't have written them yet. But every single student is doing this mock, and they all did the previous mocks and the previous end of year exams. So you can reasonably go to your teacher and say, please, can I have the best answers from last year's year 11 and year 10 so that I can learn from them? And if they say no, ask them, how else are you going to teach me to get 100%? I'll be interested to hear what they say. You know, because at the end of the day, that's what your teachers want. They really, really want you to do well. And it's your job to help them. And on the way, help yourself. Now, if you would like more top tips on how to get the grades, you should consider subscribing, because that's the only way they're coming to you. Oh no, you have to press the bell thing as well.